Tiramisu is a favorite dessert for a lot of people, but you don't have to go to Italy or even a fancy restaurant just to have a great slice of tiramisu. Today, I'll be showing you that with a little technique and some know-how, you'll be able to make your very own perfect and dangerously delicious tiramisu.
The following ingredient amounts are going to be for a 13 by 9 pan, but in the description I'll include ingredient amounts for 8 by 8 and 9 by 9 pans as well. To get started, we'll first need to brew up a big batch of espresso, or in my case, some really strong coffee. Here I am grinding up 60 grams of coffee beans, but you can get away with pre-ground if you don't have a grinder. Either way, make sure that you're using a fresh batch of high quality beans. As far as roast type goes, I'm using a medium dark roast coffee, and according to the package, it has chocolate and hazelnut notes. I'm no coffee connoisseur, but I find that this blend is perfect for tiramisu, but any coffee that you can drink black, which means no sweetener or creamer, will most likely be a great choice for tiramisu. Adjust the grind size depending on your brew method. I'm going to use a medium grind since I'll be making your standard drip coffee. A lot of brewing methods are going to work here. You can use cold brew, a mocha pot, and of course an espresso machine, but one thing you cannot do is use instant espresso or coffee. I've tried it and it did not turn out well. It's a little extra time, but freshly brewed coffee is going to be irreplaceable here. Normally, drip coffee is brewed with a bean to water ratio of 1 part bean to 17 parts water. But for tiramisu, we need to intensify the coffee flavor, and I found that the ratio of 1 part bean to 10 parts water to be perfect. It's a good idea to pile the grounds towards the shower head, otherwise you may end up with some grounds that never get soaked with water. When the coffee is finished brewing, transfer it to a glass bowl so it can start cooling down. Then you can add in an optional tablespoon or 2 of coffee liqueur. Rum or brandy are also great substitutes. Followed by that is 60 grams of sugar. You may need to adjust depending on your roast, but I find that 1 gram of sugar per 1 gram of ground coffee to be a great starting point. The goal of adding sugar here is not to make the mixture sweet, but rather to balance out some of the bitterness. Keep in mind that there's going to be a lot more sugar in the mascarpone cream and the ladyfingers themselves, and that's going to help further balance out any bitterness you may still taste in the coffee mixture. After mixing and tasting your coffee, it can be set aside to cool while we prep the rest of the ingredients. Up next, we'll need to separate 10 large eggs. There are a lot of methods out there for separating eggs, but what works best for me is to crack the egg directly into my hand and then let the egg white fall between my fingers. If the egg yolk breaks, you can immediately transfer the egg to the bowl of egg yolks. It's fine if a little bit of egg white gets mixed in with the yolk. After separating all of the eggs, you can set the egg whites aside and use them for a different recipe. I'm transferring my egg yolks to another bowl because you'll see in a second that a bowl with a handle will come in real handy. To the bowl of egg yolks, add in 250 grams of sugar, and then bring it over to the stove and place it on top of a pot of simmering water. With the bowl on the pot, reduce the heat to low just to maintain a simmer. While you could whisk this up by hand, I highly recommend that you use an electric hand mixer. Work the mixer up to high speed and thoroughly beat the eggs and sugar together. And if you do not have a bowl with a handle, then hold it using a kitchen towel because it will get quite hot. As you can see, the mixture starts out really soupy, but as you continue to whisk in more air and slowly cook the eggs, it will gradually become thicker. After about 3 to 4 minutes of whisking, you can see that the egg mixture is paler in color, which indicates air is getting whipped into the mixture. And if you look closely, you can also see that it's just starting to hold ribbons. And this is how we're looking after about 8 to 10 minutes of total whisking. The mixture has increased in volume and it is a lot lighter. The ribbons created by the whisk hold their shape well, and if you lift the beaters out of the bowl, it kinda drips off like shaving cream. What we made here is referred to as a Zabaglione, and the temperature is an important aspect for keeping the custard stable. I read sources online stating that the custard should be heated till it's about 145 to 150 Fahrenheit and even hotter, but I cooked mine till it was about 130 degrees Fahrenheit and it still turned out great. You don't have to really use a thermometer. As long as you cook it until it's hot to the touch, it should be fine. After making the Zabaglione, in a large bowl, add in 680 grams of mascarpone. If it's hard to find mascarpone at your local grocery stores, then you can make it quite easily at home using just heavy cream. I would avoid substituting cream cheese as the flavors are actually quite different. Mascarpone is richer and less tangy than your regular cream cheese. After giving the mascarpone a quick 15 to 30 second whip, add in the prepared Zabaglione. Then whip the two together using a beater until homogeneous. In the same bowl you made your Zabaglione, add in 360 grams of very cold heavy cream. Whip the cream on medium-high speed until you have soft peaks. Then add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract and 2 pinches of salt. Continue beating the cream on medium speed until you have stiff peaks, but be careful of overbeating because otherwise the cream will become grainy. When the whipped cream is finished, add it to the bowl with the other tiramisu cream ingredients, and then grab a silicone spatula and fold the cream together until there are no longer any streaks and it's one uniform color. With all the ingredients prepped, it's time for final assembly. The most important thing to look for in a tiramisu pan is that it has sharp edges. Most pans have rounded edges, which will end up causing all of the edge pieces to fall over when plating. A sharp edge pan will ensure that all pieces have a stable base to keep them upright. For assembly, we first need to form a layer of coffee-soaked ladyfingers. If using store-bought, you'll only need to submerge the ladyfingers for a brief moment because they're going to soak up the liquid rather quickly. Homemade ladyfingers, on the other hand, often require a little bit longer of a soaking time compared to store-bought. I like to do a quick roll on the surface of the soaking solution, and that usually seems to get me the perfect amount of coffee I need. If you soak the ladyfingers for too long or submerge them too deep, they'll start to fall apart and the final tiramisu will be watery. The soaked ladyfingers should be soft enough that when you press on them, there's a small amount of give, but they still are able to hold their shape. And if you're wondering what I think about store-bought versus homemade ladyfingers, I think that you should really only bother making homemade ladyfingers if you're having a really hard time finding them at your local grocery store. Homemade doesn't make too big of a difference here, and I honestly like the way the store-bought ones taste, despite the amount of hate they seem to get online. They are perfectly fine, and your tiramisu is going to end up tasting great if you use them. After laying down an evenly spaced layer of ladyfingers, put down half of the tiramisu cream. Then grab an offset spatula to spread the cream evenly. Go over the same area a few times to ensure that the cream has filled in all of the gaps. And then on top of that, put down another layer of coffee-soaked ladyfingers, pushing them down slightly into the cream. After the second layer of ladyfingers, evenly spread out the remaining half of tiramisu cream. Now the only thing that is left to do is wait. Tiramisu should chill in the fridge for a minimum of 24 hours, but tiramisu actually peaks when it's been chilling in the fridge for 2 whole days. This gives time for all of the flavors to meld together and for the ladyfingers to fully soften so you can have an easy time cutting it. So if you look closely, you might see these small yellow specks in the tiramisu cream. These are just small bits of egg and they do not stand out texturally at all. After chilling the tiramisu, it is ready to be dusted with cocoa powder. Just place a spoonful into a fine mesh sieve and dust a light layer over the top. You shouldn't see any cream peeking through the cocoa, but your dusting also shouldn't be so heavy either. Otherwise, you'll be coughing up a storm due to the excess cocoa powder. Once you're satisfied with your dusting, lastly finish off with a fine grating of dark chocolate. Before slicing or plating, it's actually a good idea to place the tiramisu in the fridge for 10 minutes. That way the cocoa powder can have some time to hydrate. This will help a lot with cutting down on coughing episodes caused by the cocoa powder. A 13x9 pan will cut into 12 slices, and a 9x9 or 8x8 pan will cut into 9 slices. To remove the tiramisu from the pan, you're going to need to sacrifice the first slice. Before you go to remove the next slice, go over the cuts again with the spatula, and then with one quick motion, remove the slice from the pan. There's a really good reason why so many people love and get excited over tiramisu. The tiramisu cream is rich and decadent, and then there's the bitterness from the coffee and cocoa powder that really help round everything out. It's a layered dessert which allows all of these different components to stand out and complement each other. So whether you're missing your trip to Italy or thinking about making someone a special dessert, you cannot go wrong making up a batch of tiramisu.